published by the government later this week. The Education Secretary, Gillian Shepherd, will use the findings to support a thoroughgoing reform of teacher training, including a national curriculum for the teachers themselves.
Unipart, the car parts firm, knows that to be competitive, it must have an educated workforce and keep educating them. So it opened a college at its Oxford factory with courses for all its staff.
Some of you are dealing with a great big portfolio, aren't you? What was that, Antonio?
This week's government white paper will underline education's vital role in Britain's competitiveness, but it'll show how badly we compare with 4 key competitors. At basic skills, equivalent to GCSEs, we're bottom of the class, with 45% of the workforce having good qualifications, well below the others. At A-level equivalent, we do slightly better, but are still way behind Germany, which does particularly well on vocational qualifications. Only at degree level are we competing better, although the lead over Germany is exaggerated by much later graduation ages there.
Schooling on the continent is much more focused on education for work and for life, and providing youngsters with most youngsters with the tools of the trade that are needed if you're going to take up an apprenticeship.
For employers like Unipart, Britain's educational performance is very worrying.
We have to be far more demanding of the educational production system. I think it's got to be forced to compete amongst itself to answer up to the needs of its customers, who are the future employers, who are parents and children. And I'm quite convinced now that it needs very, very radical change.
Tomorrow, the government will outline its response, a thorough reform of teacher training. Ministers plan to legislate this autumn to create a teacher's national curriculum, setting down exactly what trainees must learn. It means more detailed prescription than ever before. Teacher organisations will resist it. Companies like Unipart need no persuading of the link between education and competitiveness. Equally, this skills audit will further increase the pressure on the government to come forward with radical measures to reform schools, just at a time when the Education Secretary is under pressure from many within her party to be tougher on standards. Mike Baker, BBC News, Oxford.
The government's to accept significant concessions to its divorce reforms to win support from its own backbenchers. In April, the government was defeated when 100 Tory MPs voted against the proposals. The BBC's learned tonight that the Lord Chancellor's office is offering to take religious beliefs into account and will accept amendments on domestic violence and on waiting times.
Good morning.
The Lord Chancellor called in the cameras today as he visited a family law practice in central London. A highly unusual move and a demonstration of his anxiety about the fate of his family law bill. The minister is now negotiating to stop Labour and Tory backbench rebels voting against the bill on Monday.
I'm talking to a lot of people and listening to a lot of people. I'm very keen that this bill should be got by consensus. It's a very important measure. And what I don't want is not to get the bill and for the people of this country to be stuck with the current divorce law, which simply does not work.
It's understood the main concession aimed at Tories who object to no-fault divorce is to offer a religious beliefs clause. For Labour, the government's ready to say battered partners won't have to appear in court. And it'll back cutting the waiting time from a maximum of 21 months to 18.
The government at last realises that unless this bill deals and protects with the interests of children, addresses the question of domestic violence and produces a workable mechanism for ending marriages, the bill will fail.
In April, more than 100 Tories voted against no-fault divorce. Tomorrow they meet to decide whether the concessions go far enough.
We want there to be, on the face of the bill, provision for telling people why they're being divorced and for giving people with strong religious convictions some power to delay or stop a divorce.
And Labour decides tomorrow too whether to back the bill. In 24 hours it'll be clear whether the most radical reform of the divorce laws in England and Wales for 30 years and one of the most significant government bills of the session lives or dies. Anne Perkins, BBC News, Westminster.
Electricity bills for most homes should fall by up to £20 a year after a cut in the support paid to the nuclear industry. Most of Britain's modern nuclear power stations will be sold off next month when British Energy is privatised. The electricity regulator, Professor Stephen Littlechild, has decided consumers should no longer subsidise a private company. Police are searching for a consignment of highly toxic gold potassium cyanide that's disappeared from Heathrow Airport. The chemical, which looks like granules of white sugar, is packaged in containers similar to an aspirin bottle. Police say it can kill if it's inhaled or swallowed. The manufacturers of Anodin paracetamol have won a temporary High Court injunction banning the supermarket chain Asda from selling the tablets at half price. Asda is removing the product from its stores and is considering an appeal. The Prime Minister has criticised some of the latest handouts from the National Lottery Charities Board as ill-founded and ill-judged. More than 2,000 organisations, including homosexual groups and prostitutes, have benefited from the latest round of grants, which total £159 million.
The largest of today's grants, more than £600,000, went to this day shelter for the homeless in Bradford to modernise the building where it dispenses free meals, baths and advice. But in the Commons, Mr Major indicated he thought not all the charities to benefit were so deserving.
Having studied the list of all the awards that have made today, I think there are a small number of the awards that do not, in my judgment, reflect the way that Parliament and public expected the lottery money to be spent.
Some lottery grants were occasionally ill-founded and ill-judged, he said. Later, Downing Street said the Prime Minister was thinking of 4 of today's grants in particular. £66,000 to the West Midlands anti-deportation campaign, £26,000 to the London Gay and Lesbian Policing Group, £50,000 to the Leicester Lesbian, Gay and Bisexual Centre, and £82,000 to the Scottish Prostitutes Education Project in Edinburgh.
Have you ever used a cat before? No.
But it appears the Scottish group, which gives health advice to prostitutes, is partly supported by the government. It's had a £30,000 grant from the Scottish office and gets £120,000 a year from Lothian Health. One of the founders of the Leicester Group said it too has had government backing in the past, approved by Kenneth Clarke when a junior health minister.
John Major is perfectly entitled to say that he doesn't approve of it, but he doesn't have any ability or right to interfere. And I suspect that he's not fully informed about the nature of the organisation and its track record over many years.
You can't please everyone when you give that number of grants. All I'm saying is that every single bid we got, we looked at carefully and conscientiously, and we did our best in our judgment to find the right grants.
The National Lottery Charities Board says its aim is to help the disadvantaged, but as it found today, not everyone agrees on what's a good cause worthy of support from the lottery. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
British Airways has confirmed that it intends to form a partnership with American Airlines, the largest carrier in the United States. If the deal gets government approval, the two companies will create the world's largest airline alliance. But some rival companies say it'll stop competition.
For the management of the two airlines in London to announce the deal, a publicity stunt to grab the media's attention. In truth, though, the alliance needs little hype. Between them, British Airways and American Airlines will have 60% of all flights between the UK and the United States. It may also mean Heathrow Airport being opened up to more competition. That will probably be a precondition for government approval.
It's going to be good for this country because aviation is one of our very successful industries. And it's going to be good for the consumers because there'll be more price competition at Heathrow, there'll be more aviation activity at Heathrow, and American Airlines and British Airways will be able to offer unrivaled networks.
If the deal goes ahead, BA will become part of the world's biggest airline operation. Having bought several UK domestic carriers, including British Caledonian, the company is now setting its sights further afield. In Europe, it already has stakes in the French airline TAT and the German carrier Deutsche BA. In the Pacific, it part-owns the Australian carrier Qantas. In North America, it has an alliance with Canadian Airlines and part-owns US Air, a market that will be greatly expanded by the link-up with American. Other airlines have similar alliances, but this will be the biggest. The question is it anti-competitive? Richard Branson, the boss of Virgin Atlantic, says it is. He was at the Department of Transport this evening, doubtless making clear his opposition to the deal.
I mean, basically what would be created is a monster. I mean, it would be an airline which is completely dominant, an airline which will not be in the consumer's interest, an airline which will make it far more difficult for small airlines to get up and fly and compete and keep the bigger airlines on their toes.
Passengers will certainly notice the difference. Buying a BA ticket could mean travelling on an American plane. BA itself will now have to wait and see if the deal wins government approval. Jackie Hardgrave, BBC News.
The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, says that more than 500,000 women die needlessly each year in pregnancy and childbirth. Bangladesh has one of the highest mortality rates for mothers. Women there are 100 times more likely to die from childbirth than in Britain.
In Dhaka's Medical College Hospital, wards are packed with women who narrowly escaped death while giving birth. Taslima is 16, pregnant for the first time. She was in labour for 3 days before her family finally brought her to the hospital. But by then her womb was ruptured, she was bleeding profusely and her baby had stopped moving. Another hour and she'd have been dead.
She started pain, but there is no progress. So she asked for help to her family, but the family did not listen. This is the usual thing in our country. They feel that they will have the delivery at their home.
Traditional reluctance to resort to modern medicine means nearly 100 mothers die every day from giving birth, the main cause of death here for young women. 80% of them could be saved if they reached emergency services in time. Today they saved Taslima's life, but it was too late to save her baby son. Hemorrhages, convulsions, obstructed labour and here an abortion induced with a sharp stick. It's a catalogue of suffering, the effect of delays in seeking help and the shortage of medical services. For every death there are 50 women who suffer lifelong pain or disability after a traumatic delivery. If this was a disease, it would be called an epidemic. Throughout Bangladesh, the obstacle to change is a culture where women's problems have long been neglected. Tens of thousands of mothers in these villages face a prolonged and painful death every year from pregnancy or childbirth. Widespread ignorance and deep prejudice against women means that for generations it's been accepted as an unfortunate part of life in Bangladesh. Abu Bakr and Jebanessa are expecting their 4th child. They're frightened of hospitals and Abu Bakr said he wouldn't let his wife be seen by a male doctor, even if she was dying. Jebanessa said she'd do whatever her husband wished. UNICEF is now spearheading a major programme to boost access to emergency services. Saving mothers' lives also means saving their children.
When a mother dies at childbirth, and the baby survives, 75% of these babies do not reach the age of a year. And it also has implications on the well-being of the surviving children.
This woman is one of the very few to have reached a hospital in time. She lost her baby, but thousands of others have lost their life. Emily Buchanan, BBC News, Bangladesh.
The BBC sports commentator Alan Weeks has died of cancer at the age of 72. He covered a wide range of sports for more than 40 years, but was best known for his commentaries on ice skating. Kevin Geary reports.
Perhaps the greatest testimony to Alan Weeks' skills as a commentator is that the moments of sporting history he described still live so vividly in the memory, thanks to an unobtrusive yet perceptive and informative style that matched the man.
And once again, a roar of applause, and on the far side of the rink, the people are standing and applauding.
As versatile as he was accomplished, he commentated on a remarkable 25 sports for the BBC. Alan Weeks was a natural at the microphone. And like many of his ilk, he came to it almost by accident, the BBC needing at short notice an ice hockey commentator at his local Brighton rink in 1951. Olympic ice, in fact, was to give him many of his most memorable occasions, including America's victory over the old Soviet Union.
28 years I've been reporting on ice hockey, and I have never seen a scene like this before.
Olympic water, too.
David Wilkie is absolutely superb. Look at him go, and it's Wilkie!
Unfailingly unassuming, he always shunned the limelight, but among his colleagues he was revered as a professional for whom, personally, straight sixes was the only acceptable score.
It's right across the board. That's it. What a marvellous, marvellous set of marks.
Football and Italy have won their opening game in Euro 96. They beat Russia 2-1 at Anfield. Croatia have also made a winning start, beating Turkey by a single goal at the City Ground in Nottingham. A British millionaire has donated his entire collection of gold and silver works of art worth £75 million to the nation. Arthur Gilbert, who's been living in California for almost 50 years, is thought to have one of the finest private collections in the world.
The Gilbert collection comprises a glittering array of silver and gold treasure. It was built up over the last 4 decades and is the largest gift of its kind ever to be made to the nation. It includes a silver chair built for a Maharaja and displays of micro-mosaics such as this table crafted out of 1,500 tiny stones per square inch. Arthur Gilbert was born in Golders Green, but moved to Los Angeles 47 years ago and made his millions in Californian real estate. Today he was with Lord Rothschild, the chairman of the Heritage Lottery Fund, who he says persuaded him to donate his collection.
I told you, he mesmerised me, hypnotised me, and convinced me that it should come back here because a lot of our art that we have came from here. And I agreed with him that it should come back to my England. That was.
A new gallery for the collection is to be created at Somerset House in London at a cost of £15 million from the lottery. These vaults, once the home of the Inland Revenue's printing press, will be refurbished.
We had this idea of Somerset House and of how Somerset House might be opened up, not just the museum area, the whole building, as a result of this great donation.
Much of the collection came originally from English country houses. Now treasures lost to Britain are coming home. Rosie Millard, BBC News.
The main news again, more than 70 Tory MPs have defied the government by supporting a call for a referendum on Britain's future in Europe. That's all from the 9 o'clock news. Good night.
Good evening. 150 prison officers at 3 jails in Leicestershire are facing disciplinary action after stopping work to hold unauthorised meetings about budget cuts. The officers have withdrawn all goodwill and are working to rule. Inmates at the Glenparva Young Offenders Centre were kept locked in their cells for an extra hour this morning. Officers defied warnings from management and staged an unauthorised union meeting. Angry at impending cuts in the service at a time when more people are being sent to already overcrowded institutions, they claim a potentially dangerous situation is brewing. Similar meetings were held at Gartree and Leicester prisons.
Staff are continually being treated with contempt by this department. We're expected to do increasing voluntary additional hours. The pay awards are becoming derisory. And now this year, the straw that broke the camel's back, we've got 13% budget cuts over the next 3 years. Put that in the context of an ever-increasing prison population, and all signs are that that is going to explode.
Since the Criminal Justice Act came into force, it's been illegal for warders to stage industrial action, but staff are working strictly to their contracts and withholding goodwill. Workers who were made redundant after East Midlands Electricity sold its shops to the Home Power chain staged a demonstration outside the company headquarters today. It was timed to coincide with the announcement of the firm's profits for last year, which totalled £214 million. The staff want some of the profits to pay for their redundancies.
Around 350 workers have been made redundant since East Midlands Electricity sold its share in Home Power a year ago. The administrators were called in 2 months ago after Home Power got into financial difficulties. The workers demonstrating outside East Midlands Electricity believe they were entitled to some of the profits announced today.
It's just so unfair that, you know, just because they sold us off this new company for 12 months, then we're entitled to nothing, or so they say.
They promised us that we would be paid redundancy. It hasn't happened, and they've just really sat laughing at us. I think it's absolutely terrible.
No one from East Midlands Electricity was available for interview. In a statement, they said they were sorry about the collapse of Home Power, but as the former owners, they weren't responsible for the developments after the shops were sold.
Severn Trent, the privatised water company which serves most of the East Midlands, has revealed a huge increase in profits. It made £373 million, a rise of almost 40%. The jobs of 2,500 workers at an engineering firm have been secured after the company won orders worth £38 million. It's the biggest contract won by European gas turbines. The Lincoln company is to supply power and equipment for a BP project in the North Sea off Shetland. The company has also won an order for combined heating and power units for the Carlsberg brewery in Copenhagen. That's all from us, but we'll be back tomorrow with bulletins throughout the day and a main programme at 6:30. The weather now from Michael Fish.
Good evening to you. It's all change again, and I think this will be the scene before too long. But at the moment, we still have the area of low pressure that gave many places wet and windy weather today, but that's going to be moving out of the way. High pressure slipping in from the southwest, quietening things down, and for the rest of the week, as I said, a complete change. It's going to be dry and sunny and eventually getting warmer. It's quite breezy at the moment too across the country, but those winds too will tend to ease down as the low moves away, although I think it's going to stay pretty windy across the north right the way through the night. Thickest cloud across eastern Scotland, one or two other thicker patches of cloud. If you were watching the football, for instance, it was raining in Nottingham not so long ago, and there are still some showery bursts of rain across the country. But it's going to be clearing away during the rest of the night, eventually from the southeast, broken cloud following along behind, but still some showers right the way through the night in that western part of Scotland. But as the cloud breaks in the north, temperatures dipping down to about 8 degrees. Cloud holding on in the southeast, though, until quite late on, so a warmer night there, lowest 13 degrees. But by the morning it will have gone. Many places starting off dry, bright and sunny. More cloud in the west and north, some showers into the west and north of Scotland, the odd one into Northern Ireland. Those could well feed across into eastern Scotland for a time, but then later on I think they'll tend to fade away. A little bit of cloud sort of coming and going further south, but generally speaking for most of England, Wales and Northern Ireland it's going to be a fine day with some sunshine every now and again. Normal temperatures in the west and in the north, fairly warm again, 22 degrees in the east there, and the wind will be lighter as well. Moving on to Thursday, it's only really the north of Scotland, I think, where it'll be on the cloudy side, maybe with some drizzly rain. All other parts of the country should be dry, a good deal of sunshine, temperatures beginning to climb yet again up to 20 or 21 degrees, and then moving into Friday, very little changes. It's just that northern part of Scotland where it could be on the cloudy side. Sea breezes picking up, keeping some of the coast cooler. Temperatures, though, continuing to climb into the warm categories inland, and come the weekend, I think we could well find it very warm, especially in the southeast, up to 25 degrees. A very good night to you.
Just who is Nick Leeson?
He's like a virus. He's an agent of destruction.
He's real cool. Real cool.
In his own fantasy world, he was a star.
I'm his wife. Why should he lie?
I really don't care what people think. And what was Baring's Bank?
A lot of them are just bumbling fools.
This simply can't happen to chaps like ours. We're Barings.
The truth behind the fantasy that cost £830 million. An inside story special tomorrow 10:20 on BBC1.
The Men Behaving Badly Guide to Being Irresistible.
Why do you have to do that in bed, Gary?
It's what blokes do.
Why do you think women don't do it?
Lack of confidence.
The Charm Offensive begins Thursday the 20th of June on BBC1.
A road traffic accident reopens a psychological wound for surgeon Scissors Smedley. Cardiac arrest in half an hour. Before that, on BBC1, the pressure's on to succeed. It's either fly high or go under.
Right, left, right, left, right, left.
This is the story of 10 soldiers with one ambition, to fly helicopters for the army. For one would-be pilot, the dream is already over. He couldn't make the grade.
Now, we've reached a point really where we can't progress any further.
For the other 9 members of Course 354, the pressure is mounting. They've finished their basic training. Now they'll start the advanced phase of the course, where they learn to fly the Army way.